Welcome to Everyday Cycling. This is the third in our three-part cycling webinar series. In part 1, we focused on the things you need to know to get set up for cycling. We talked about the parts of the bike, different types of bicycle and their purposes, legal requirements related to cycling, clothing and optional equipment, how to fit your helmet correctly, and how to check over your bike before you ride. In part 2, we talked about cycling safety and basic maintenance. We covered topics like cycling safety principles, hand signals, how to pump your tires and oil your chain, route planning, and cycling during the pandemic. If you missed those webinars and want to check them out, you can find them at pointa.ca/designthenewnormal. If you want to use your bike to actually get places, or even if you just want to take a snack on your ride, you'll need a way to carry things with you. Most people already own a backpack, so that's usually the most low-cost way to bring things with you on a ride. A backpack can be a good option if you aren't riding very far, and if you aren't carrying anything particularly heavy. That being said, there are a few reasons why backpacks are not an ideal option for carrying things while riding. Due to the design of backpacks and bicycles, wearing a backpack for a long time while riding can put strain on your arms and shoulders and can frankly make your back quite sweaty. While some people find that messenger-style bags are more comfortable when riding, this personal preference isn't shared by everyone, and the two types of bags share a lot of the same drawbacks. If you plan to carry things with you often while you're riding, you might want to consider some other options. If you're carrying heavier loads or just want a more comfortable ride, your best bet is to find a way to have your bike do the work for you. There are a variety of baskets available that mount on the front of your bike or on a rear rack. Baskets are pretty much the most convenient of all carrying options. You can drop whatever you have in the basket, maybe tie it down if it's light, and get going. You aren't limited to carrying around a particular bag, which can be a real bonus. Whether you have a shopping bag for picking up groceries or a nice professional bag for a meeting, it's easy to just throw it in a basket. While baskets are nice and easy to use, they do have a few limitations. Front baskets usually have a fairly low weight limit, and if you do load them up, it can affect your steering. Some baskets install on top of a rear rack, which can significantly increase the amount of weight that they can carry. However, because baskets are installed quite high up on your bike, it can also affect your balance if you put a lot of weight in them. So basically, baskets are a fantastic, flexible, convenient option if you just need to carry a few things, but once you get up over 10 or 15 pounds, you'll likely want to think about getting a rack and panniers. If you want to carry a larger amount of weight, for example, a couple of bags of groceries or your supplies for a day at the beach, then your best bet is to get a rear rack. Rear racks can usually carry upwards of 50 pounds, which is more than enough for most people's needs. The easiest way to use a rack is to attach panniers to it. Panniers are bags that are specifically designed to clip onto a bike rack. The great thing about this system is that unlike backpacks, the weight is carried by the bike rather than you. And unlike baskets, the weight is carried low down on the bike, which lowers your center of gravity and helps to keep you stable. There are also tons of panniers to choose from, so you're bound to get something that fits the size and aesthetic that you're looking for. The downside to racks is that you are limited to either using panniers or maybe strapping things on top of the rack. So in that way, racks are less versatile than baskets. However, because you can carry so much more weight in a basket, I would still argue that a rear rack instead of panniers gives you the best option for carrying things on your bike. Backpacks, baskets, and racks are the most common methods that people use to carry things with them when they ride. A rack and a good set of panniers should be sufficient for almost anything that most people will want to carry on their bikes. That being said, sometimes your lifestyle demands more. Whether it's a toolbox, gardening supplies, groceries for a family of 4, or even a large cooler of drinks for a day at the beach, at some point you might decide that you want more heavy-duty bicycle transportation. That's where trailers and cargo bikes come in. Trailers and cargo bikes come in a range of styles and sizes and a range of price points. Trailers are towed behind your bicycle. They can carry anywhere from about 70 to more than 300 pounds. Price-wise, they start at around $200 and go up from there. Cargo bikes are a more significant investment, usually costing upwards of $2,000. Generally, they can carry more than 100 pounds, some of them more than 200 pounds. With both trailers and cargo bikes, you'll want to consider things like intended use, the number of wheels you'd like them to have, attachment points, and compatible accessories. There are many other, more specific accessories to help you carry what you need. This includes things like water bottle holders, phone mounts, handlebar bags that you can unclip and carry with you, and frame and saddle bags that can carry locks, snacks, and patch kits. There are even cup holders for your morning cup of coffee. So if you find that you need something to bring with you, odds are you'll be able to find a convenient way to attach it to your bike. Getting a good bike lock is important if you plan to leave your bike unattended for any length of time. There are a few different types of bike lock to choose from, and not all bike locks are made equal. Cable locks are one of the most common types of bike lock. Cable locks are made of many strands of long, flexible metal wires twisted together, usually covered by a plastic coating. Cable locks tend to be inexpensive, and their length can be convenient for locking your bike to large objects like big poles. Unfortunately, cable locks are also the least secure form of bike lock. The thin individual strands of the cable can easily be cut through with wire cutters, making it easy to steal your bike with minimal effort and minimal investment in tools. U-locks are the other most common type of lock that you'll see. U-locks tend to be heavier than cable locks, and they are shorter than cable locks, which makes it more difficult to lock to large objects. That being said, U-locks are more secure than cable locks. For most U-locks, an angle grinder is required to cut through them, which is an expensive and noisy piece of machinery. When selecting a U-lock, you should get the shortest lock that will serve your purposes. The longer a lock is, the more space that a potential thief will have to insert something that can be used to pry the lock apart. You should also look for a lock that locks on both sides of the U. Cheaper U-locks, seen on the left, only lock on one side. This means that only one cut is needed to open the lock. Better quality U-locks, like the one seen on the right, lock on both sides of the U, which means that the thief would have to cut through the U twice before the lock could be dismantled. Other types of locks include folding locks and chains, both of which can be handy for wrapping around large objects. These locks might be more or less secure depending on their construction and the materials used, but you need to go to a fairly high price point to get a chain or a folding lock that's as secure as a good quality U-lock. It's also important to note that chain locks can be very heavy. One way to determine how secure a bike lock is to look for a Sold Secure rating. Sold Secure awards bronze, silver, and gold ratings to bike locks that reach certain levels of security. If you want a very secure lock, looking for one with a gold Sold Secure rating can help. There are 4 ways that a bike can be stolen. First, it may be left unlocked. While this seems like a no-brainer, there are ways to do it accidentally. For example, if you try to lock your bike to a low pole with nothing wide at the top of it, your bike isn't really locked up because it's possible for a thief to lift your bike up and off of the top of the pole. I've also seen instances where people have attached the lock to their bike, but missed attaching it to the object that they'd meant to lock to. The second and third ways that a bike could be stolen are by breaking the lock or breaking the thing that the bike is locked to. As I've already mentioned, a short U-lock that locks on both sides of the U is going to give you the best protection against both cutting and prying. However, it really depends on what you've locked to. A high-quality lock is next to useless if it's locked to a thin piece of wood, a very young tree, or a piece of scaffolding that can be dismantled. Make sure that you lock your bike to a very solid, secure object. Finally, it's possible to steal parts of a bike that are not locked. The worst way that this can happen is if a bicycle is only locked by its wheel. In this case, all it takes is a wrench or an Allen key for someone to remove the bicycle from the wheel and walk off with it, leaving just the wheel behind. It's also possible that if the bicycle frame is locked, other components can be stolen off of it, such as the wheels or the saddle. So how to avoid these things? First, find a secure object to lock your bike to that cannot be easily broken or dismantled. Then when you do lock your bike, ensure that you lock to the frame of the bike. If possible, lock the frame and your rear wheel. Depending on where you're leaving your bike and for how long, it may also be helpful to have a second lock so that you can secure both of your wheels. And remember, if you're locking up at a place of business, avoid locking to the wheelchair ramp, as that can impede access for people who need it. There are many options available if you'd like to ride with your child before they're able to bike on their own. The child seat is a classic option. The great thing about child seats is that they attach to a bike that you already own, making it a relatively cost-effective option that makes it easy to turn your bike back to normal when you no longer need it. Child seats can be mounted on the top tube or stem in front of the rider, or at the rear of the bike behind the rider. Front child seats allow you to see and interact with your child while riding. They generally work for children up to about 2 to 3 years of age or up to about 33 pounds. Rear-mounted child seats can usually hold more weight and offer more space for older children. Rear-mounted seats can also be better for taller adults who might find that a front-mounted seat gets in the way of their knees. The trade-off, of course, is that it's less easy to interact with your child. Long-tail cargo bikes have an extended rear rack to which you can attach child seats or other accessories for children to ride along with you. Depending on the type of long-tail, shorter ones are called mid-tail bikes, you can fit 1 to 3 children on the back of the bike. If you're interested in getting a longtail, you can choose from a range of longtail bikes, or you can purchase a conversion kit that transforms a regular bicycle into a longtail. For children around the ages of 4 to 6 who might be pedaling but unable to ride for long distances under their own steam, a trail-a-bike is a great option. The trail-a-bike attaches to the back of your bicycle and allows the child to pedal or not while they ride. Trailers and cargo bikes aren't just useful for cargo. There are tons of trailer options out there, most for 1 or 2 children. The biggest downside of a trailer is that your children are farther away from you, making it difficult to check on them or interact with them. This is balanced out by having a lot of other features, such as protection from the weather, compatibility with car seats, and cargo space for other items. Trailers also have some safety features when compared to child seats, as their low position makes them unlikely to flip over, even if the bicycle itself falls over. The metal cage of the trailer can also provide some protection in the event of a crash or collision that isn't offered by a child seat. Finally, if you really want to invest in a child-centric bike, then you might consider a Dutch bakfiets-style cargo bike. Bakfiets bikes have a large box at the front of the bike that can hold anywhere from 1 to 4 children, depending on the bike and the accessories attached. These workhorse bikes provide the safety of a low center of gravity and the convenience and enjoyment of being able to see and interact with your children easily. The box also offers plenty of room for any other items that you need to carry. Some bakfiets bikes also come with an electric motor to assist you on hills, something you might need if you have 4 kids in there. Whichever option you choose for riding with your child, always follow all manufacturer's instructions for installation, maintenance, and upper and lower age and weight limits, and always ensure that your child wears a helmet. It's also important to note that your child should be at least 12 months of age and should have the head and neck control required to withstand the bumping and bouncing of a bike ride, while also supporting a helmet. It's best to check with your healthcare provider before you begin riding with your child. One of the big questions that you'll have to answer when teaching your child to ride a bike is whether or not to use training wheels. Training wheels can be helpful in giving a nervous child more confidence or to allow your child to learn to pedal without having to worry about balancing. That being said, training wheels do not teach children how to balance and may be counterproductive if your child becomes too used to the bike doing the balancing for them. It's usually unnecessary to use training wheels at all. To begin teaching your child to ride a bike without training wheels, it's easiest to either take the pedals off of their bike or to start them on a push bike. Have the seat low enough that their feet can comfortably touch the ground and encourage them to push with their feet and coast. As they learn to balance, they'll be able to gradually hold their feet up longer between pushes. Once your child is confidently balancing for several seconds between pushes, you can reattach their pedals and move on to learning how to pedal. Have them practice pedaling in a straight line, looking ahead of them rather than down, and then when they get the hang of that, move on to turning right and left. Make certain that they also practice coming to a full stop using their brakes early on, so that they'll be able to safely do so once they start to pick up speed. If your child is nervous, it can help to practice on grass first to provide a softer landing if they fall. However, it can also be much more difficult to ride on grass than it is on pavement, so you should encourage your child to switch to pavement as soon as they are doing well on the grass. At the end of the day, it's up to you whether you want to use training wheels or get your child riding independently right away. But if you follow the steps I just listed, you'll probably be surprised how quickly your child learns to ride. Once your child is riding independently, you can begin to go on rides together. Start in safe, off-road areas like your neighborhood park. It's important to remember that children cannot ride as far or for as long as adults can, and that they can be more susceptible to sunburn, fatigue, hot or cold temperatures, and hunger and thirst. It's best to ride single file and to keep your child ahead of you, as this lets them set the pace and allows you to keep an eye on them. Once your child is older and more confident, you can also ride on quiet streets. It's important to remember that children may not be able to judge the speed and distance of approaching vehicles, so keep an eye out ahead of them and ensure that they stop at every intersection. When you start to go on longer rides, plan to take breaks and pick a fun destination where they can stretch their legs. Just like you, your child needs to dress properly for riding. Dress them for the weather, double-check that their shoelaces are tied and tucked in, and make certain that their helmet is fitted properly. In Ontario, all cyclists under the age of 18 must wear an approved bicycle helmet. One of the benefits of cycling is that it gets you outdoors. Because of this, it's important to account for the weather when heading out for a bike ride. When you're biking in the heat, remember to bring lots of water or sports drinks to keep yourself hydrated. Wear comfortable, light-colored clothing that wicks sweat away from your body. If you're going on a longer ride, keep to an easy pace and plan to take a break at a shady location along your route. Usually when it's hot, it's also sunny. Wear sunscreen and remember to reapply it often. Remember to check your lower back in particular. Often a shirt that seems long enough when you're standing can ride up when you're bent over on your bike, leaving you exposed to the sun. When biking in cooler weather, layers are your best friend. This allows you to dress warmly enough that you can be comfortable when you begin your ride, and you can then adjust as the exercise warms you up. It can also be a good idea to bring an extra layer in case the temperature drops or the wind picks up. Pay particular attention to your hands and feet. These extremities are exposed to the wind and can get cold very easily. You may also need a thin headband or a hat that can fit under your helmet to protect your ears. It can be easy to forget to drink water when it's cold out, so remember to stay hydrated. Bring plenty of snacks with you, as you'll be burning extra calories to keep warm. Also keep in mind that in the fall it gets dark early, so bring your lights if you think you'll be out close to sunset. You'll also need to be prepared for rain. A raincoat will help to keep you dry, and you might also want to consider rain pants depending on the temperature. If you think that you'll be riding in the rain, I strongly recommend that you install fenders on your bicycle. Not only do fenders protect you from getting sprayed with water and mud, they also protect your bike, which increases its lifespan and saves you money in the long run. Cycling is a great way to experience the outdoors, and as long as you plan ahead and bring the things that you need to deal with the weather, you'll have a safe and enjoyable ride. Getting a flat tire is the most common mechanical issue that happens to bicycles. Luckily, with some affordable tools and a little knowledge, it's easy to fix a flat yourself. There are a few tools that you will need to fix your flat. Tire levers, seen on the left, usually come in sets of 2 or 3. Make certain that you get at least 2 of them. Second from the left, you can see a patch kit and its contents. If you don't want to patch the puncture, you can also buy a new tube to install. Next, we have pliers, which you will need to safely remove any sharp objects that are in your tire. And on the right, you can see various tools that you might need to remove your wheel. The tool that you will need depends on your specific bike, but it's usually going to be either a 15mm wrench or an Allen key. Finally, you'll need a bicycle pump. I strongly recommend getting one with a pressure gauge that shows you the air pressure in the tire. It's important to know about the different parts of the wheel before you start working on one. The wheel itself consists of everything metal: the axle, the hub, the spokes, and the rim. The rubber ring that goes around the outside of the wheel is the tire, and inside the tire there's a tube that holds air. You'll see how these things all fit together in a moment. To fix a flat tire, the first step is to remove your wheel from the frame. To do so, loosen the nuts or bolt that are holding your wheel in place, or open up your quick release lever. If you are removing the rear wheel, you'll need to pull the derailleur out of the way. Once you've done that, you can pull the wheel up and out of the frame and unhook the chain from the gears. Once you have the wheel out of the frame, you need to get the tire off of the wheel. Slide one of your tire levers between the tire and the rim. Then, push the end of the lever down towards the spokes to pry the edge of the tire off of the rim. Here's the same thing from a different angle. Do the same thing with a second tire lever a few inches away from the first one. Then you can run one of your tire levers around the rim to fully remove that side of the tire. Now that you have one side of the tire off, you can reach inside and pull the tube out of the tire. If you have a Presta valve, you'll have to remove the lock ring before you can pull the tube out of the wheel. Remove the valve from the rim, and then you can fully remove the tire from the wheel. Carefully check the tire inside and out for any small, sharp objects, such as glass or wire, that may have caused the flat. Remember that you're looking for something sharp, so resist the urge to feel for it with your hands. If you find anything, you can remove it carefully with pliers. You should also check your rim tape, which goes around the inside of your rim. Make certain that it's intact, that it hasn't shifted or torn. To reassemble your wheel, you need to put a little bit of air in your tube. You want it to have just enough air to be round instead of flat, but you don't want it to actually get bigger. Tuck one edge of the tire back into the rim. Make certain to check your tire for a direction. If your tire has directional arrows on it, they should point in the same direction that your tire will rotate when it's on the bike. Next, you are going to insert the valve into the rim and tuck the tube into the tire. Starting at the valve and moving in both directions, tuck the other edge of the tire into the rim. Be very careful when you're doing this not to pinch the tube between the tire and the rim. Make certain that that tube is really tucked up inside of the tire. You should avoid using tools to reinstall the tire because they might puncture the tube. Instead, if the tire is very hard to get on, use the fat part of your palms to gradually inch the tire over the edge of the rim. If you have a Presta valve, remember to reinstall the lock ring. Once your wheel is reassembled, it's time to reattach it to your frame. You're going to slide the axle into the dropouts, which are these slots in the frame. If it's a rear wheel, pull the derailleur out of the way and hook the chain back onto the gears. Then you can slide the axle into the dropouts. Check that your wheel is centered in the frame. If it's a front wheel, the axle should be all the way into the dropouts on both sides. If it's a rear wheel, pull the axle all the way into the dropout on the gear side, we call that the drive side. But then on the other side, it can be wherever it has to be in that slot to allow the wheel to be centered in the frame. Once you have the wheel centered, tighten down the nuts or bolt that attach your wheel to the frame, or tighten up your quick release. Make certain that you tighten things quite firmly to ensure that your wheel is secure in the frame. Finally, pump up your tires and do one last visual check to make certain that the tire is seated well with no bulges or flat spots. Once you've done that, you're ready to ride. This is the end of our 3-part cycling webinar series. Thanks for taking the time to learn about cycling with us. While this webinar is pre-recorded, I'm still very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just type your question in a comment below and I'll respond with an answer. Also check out pointa.ca/design the new normal for other webinars and for our design challenge.